Jose's a great guy. Dog lover. He's probably got like 8 rescues. And he's been in our game a very long time. So you want somebody in that position that really loves our game, that served our game for a long time, and somebody that's really is going to move the needle. What that looks like, I think, is, I'm not going to tell him how to do his job, but there are certain things that we need. I don't know if he can get that. Open up the negotiations for a new television deal would be nice. We need our own television deal so we can understand what our worth is. I think one, he also needs to fight for more revenue shared dollars when it comes to women's basketball, because we can't forget when this case was brought up, it was football, it was men's basketball, and it was women's basketball. So any percentage that's less than what we deserve needs to be addressed if we're not getting it across the board.
We're going to go to our left. We'll start with you, Jalen, then the gentleman on the far end.
Jalen Johnson, Rising Media Stars. Coach, Bree was just telling us that you have a very calm energy when you come into the locker room, even when you guys are down. Has that always been your demeanor in your coaching career, or has that changed for you over your years?
It's changed over the years. I think it probably changed more of we got better players. That's one. They're better listeners. They really understand and want just to win basketball games. And it's not to say that when I was 20 years younger or 25 years younger, I had the energy to do it every game. It didn't work really. I thought it was working, but it really didn't work, I think. You got to take the pulse of your team and how they take in information. And I find that, whatever moves our team, I'll do. Like if it takes a, fire and brimstone, I'll give it to them. If it takes just me just saying these are 3 things that we need to adjust, in the second half, they take it.
We're staying to our left.
Chapel Fowler at the State. Dawn, can you reflect on what the past year has been like for Ashlyn Watkins and what you see the next step for her as heading into her senior season?
Ash, unfortunate. We actually don't even like talking about Ashlyn. One, because we're not a program that when we sustain a loss like that we're not hung up on that. But Ash's process has been going smoothly. Obviously, she's off crutches. She's been off crutches for a while. I think we've missed her at times, but we don't like to bring that up because, there's nothing that we can do about it. And the fact that we're here without her, is quite an incredible feat that is probably not talked about a whole lot because we don't talk about it a whole lot. But to get her back, her athleticism, her shot blocking ability, her ability to defend, on the perimeter and inside, her ability to get to the basket and create her own shot. So, her journey back will probably get her back in a real flow. And our doctors might cringe when I say this, is probably midsummer, late summer for us. Not for them, but for us, where she can actually do some things like we can actually put our hands on and work with her.
We're going to go to our right. We'll do Cora, Andrea, and then we'll come back up to Sean.
Cora Hall, USA Today. Dawn, Sanaya,
USA Today?
Yeah, this weekend.
Oh, okay. All right, Cora. All right. Okay.
Raven, Sanaya, and Bree were just freshmen in 2022. They had a little bigger roles when you guys tried to repeat in 2023. obviously they have a championship under their belt now, but what are the biggest ways you've seen those three grow? And
They got 2.
well, another one, yes, sorry. What are the biggest ways you've seen them grow to help this team be able to achieve that repeat?
I mean, I think that entire class is the epitome of sacrifice. Like, they've sacrificed, and they learned while sitting or playing, limited minutes. And I know they're going to be great wherever they end up, or whatever franchise they end up playing for in the WNBA, because they took the necessary steps to have a deeper understanding of playing a role, and they're winners. Like, they're winners, playing smaller roles, big roles, and they're playing the biggest role for us in this championship run. And I just can't be more proud, because in this day and age where to not play a whole lot means you're definitely going into the transfer portal. Like, it's a definite. The way they just sacrificed and held out, and now they position themselves of doing something that very few classes are able to do, and that's try to win a third. Proud of them.
We're going Andrea, Sean, Ava.
Andrea Adelson, ESPN. Don, your players have talked about wanting another opportunity at UConn because of what happened the last time around. How much have you sensed extra fuel or motivation knowing they have a second chance and it comes in the national championship game?
I think the fuel is to win another national championship. That's where the fuel comes in. The challenge is great. They're playing great basketball. Like, it's beautiful to watch. It's cringe-worthy to be their opponent, So there are things that we need to do to play a lot better than we played a month and a half ago, But they're competitors. They're competitors. If they were any other way, they probably wouldn't be on our team.
We'll take our next question from the front with Sean.
Don, Sean Hurd, Anscape. This tournament started with 16 black head coaches in the tournament.
16. Say that again, Sean?
It started with 16 black head coaches in the tournament. Black head coaches.
This tournament did?
Yeah. What is that like to?
I didn't know that, y'all.
What is that like to know, to see, to be a part of, and then to continue to represent in the championship game?
Shit, that's awesome. Like, that is awesome. I didn't know. I usually go through and try to figure out. A lot of times we're playing each other in the same region. Didn't happen that time. We're a little spread out, which is good, which allows a black coach to be represented in the Final Four. Truly, representation matters, because if we're not a part of, the biggest stage of college women's basketball, sometimes that's used against us. So I'm glad I'm here representing, that part of our game, because we got a lot of young people that look like us, that need to see us in these situations. Not necessarily have to have to come to South Carolina, but as long as you see it, you won't shy away from giving another black coach an opportunity to get here, and you helping her get here, or him.
Our next three are going to be Ava, Maddie, Doug. If we can get the microphone over to Ava, please.
Hey, Don. Ava Wallace from the Washington Post. When you're talking about when you're bringing recruits in and they're coming in on visits and you're trying to get them to understand that there's a process here, you might be on the bench for a couple of years, how much at this point...
Don't think we say that.
You don't say that? Okay. Because last night you were talking about how you say, we want to make you a pro. You might not be a starter in the WNBA. You're going to have a similar role here as you might in the pros. How much in terms of getting recruits to understand that and maybe accept that, want that, are you able to hand off to your seniors now? Like someone like a Sanaya Fake and be like, talk to her, look at what she's doing now.
Yeah.
Or do you disagree with the premise of my question, maybe?
Yeah. Here it is. Like when a young person comes into our program, right? The returners who have been there, they all know we start from scratch every year. It's not like we're coming in, we're saying, hey, you're going to be the starter, you're going to be. No, production is the key. The production is nameless, it's faceless, it's experienceless. Like if you're a player and you're consistent with, how you operate from June until 2 weeks before we open the season, like those are the months that we're preparing who's going to be our starters, who's going to be, who will play an integral role in coming off the bench and creating depth for us. It just so happens that it's really hard at this level when you're our program and you are competing for a national championship. Experience usually shows up. Take for instance Joyce. Like Malaysia, like Tessa, like the two of them last year. There was a build up to what they were able to do. In the championship run, is just how it plays out. Like, Asia Wilson, and I never like, and I probably have lost recruits because I'm never gonna tell any young person you're gonna automatically start. Like, young people, you need to bet on yourself. Like if you think you're that good, right? You don't need a handout. You just allow your work to speak for itself. And if it finds you in the starting lineup, nameless, faceless, production is the thing that matters. So, I don't know if I answered your question, but that's how we operate. I just wanted to say that because I did do that when I was in my first couple of years of coaching. I started someone off of potential. Wasn't not nearly the hardest worker. Super talented. Backfired. Never do it again. Never. The cream will always rise. So for us, if you're in the starting lineup, it's because you've consistently performed in practice.
We'll go Maddie, Doug, Mackenzie, Nancy.
Hi, Dawn. Maddie Kenny with the New York Post. Raven was talking about, as a little girl, watching Brianna Stewart win 4 straight titles and how that might have felt attainable, and her now being on the doorstep of a third and winning back-to-back. It doesn't make that any less surreal that you guys are here. I'm just wondering, have you taken time to just step back and appreciate this moment that South Carolina women's basketball is?
No, I haven't. I like real time. Like if you've, when you ask me, in this moment, I'll reflect on that in this moment. But we have a job to do. I will say Raven was the conductor in putting that class together. Like during the recruiting process, it was during the pandemic. Raven and I would talk, and she would ask me who we're recruiting, right? And she would be the first one to say, "Hey, you about to get a birdie." Like she would tell me, "You about to get a birdie," and then she self-described herself as Big Bird, right? Yeah, she was gonna be the last one to commit. She was gonna get all her troops lined up, and then Big Bird's gonna bring it on home. And Raven consistently said, we're gonna win championships. And you're thinking like a, 18, 17-year-old young person, really doesn't know what she's saying because it's hard on the other side of this. She's won championships in high school, so she was just speaking on what she really believed. And, although I went with it, I did in the moment, because in recruiting, you want to believe young people. And I'll be damned if it ain't come true that she got championships on her resume. And she's putting us in a position of winning a third in her class, which is quite incredible.
We're staying to our right, Doug, if you could raise your hand.
Hey, Coach, Doug Feinberg, the AP. You guys in UConn in the last couple decades, in the last decade, have dominated the sport, playing well and winning championships. I remember you eloquently spoke last year about Caitlin and how winning a title does not define a legacy, since you yourself have been in the Final Four many times and didn't win it. Just how
I hope this year goes the same way.
That's my question. I mean, you have a player in Paige who obviously is one of the best in the country right now and has had an injured play career, but
Right.
really good. You know her well. Can you just talk about her, what she's meant to women's basketball, and even if you guys do win tomorrow, how that won't define her as not being maybe as good as others just because she didn't win a title, if that's what you believe?
I'm gonna tread lightly with this. Here's the thing. Sometimes we create these narratives about great players. Caitlin was one of them. Paige is one of them right now. And we tend to forget the narrative about what our kids have been able to do. And going for their third in 4 years. So there's a sentimental narrative about Paige. Great freaking player. Like anybody would start their franchise with Paige because of her efficient way of playing, because of she's a winner, because she's cerebrally just knows the game, just has an aura about her. And she'll be the number one pick in the WNBA draft, and she'll be an Olympian. She will be all of those things, right? But when you put a narrative out there, everybody sees that, and it puts us at a disadvantage, whether you want to believe so or not. Officials see it. It's all over TikTok. It's all over SportsCenter. It's all over all of that. And she's a great player, but just because you're a great player doesn't mean you need to win a national championship to legitimize it. Paige is legit. She was legit from the moment she stepped, on this stage or prior to in Minnesota. Her career is legendary. She will leave a legacy at UConn, whether she wins one or not. So I just want to put that out there. Like I can't not address it because it's happening. Like it happened to us last year. Everything was about Caitlin Clark and her legacy and her ability to win a national championship. Yet we were coming to this thing undefeated, doing something that's unprecedented at the time, because it's hard. I mean, it's hard. And then we find ourselves back here in a similar situation. So, I want the sentiments to be about our players and what our players been able to do equally, because there's room to do both. Okay, we can raise Paige up because she deserves that. We can raise our players up because they deserve that. And that's not talked about enough. There's room for our game. Like it's for Jose. There's room for our game for all of us to be covered. Let's not choose one's history over another program's history. Let's not choose one player over another player's history, because we're all creating history for our game.
Mackenzie, if you could raise your hand, we'll get the microphone to you. Nancy, you're following Mackenzie.
Mackenzie Wolford, USA Today Sports. Sorry, mouthful. Coach Staley. No, you're all good. Coach Staley, you've talked a little bit about your relationship with Sarah Strong's mom, Allison Feaster, and how y'all were on the same WNBA team. Obviously, you can't root for her that much because she's not on your team, but did you ever think that a teammate of yours from the NBA, you would be playing against her kid, and how do you feel for her in this opportunity?
Yeah, great teammate, Allison. Great teammate. We had some historical moments together. When she had Sarah, she would tell me she's good. Well, she actually didn't tell me she was good. parents are a little different. They want to see them in certain situations. And, as she got older and older, we probably came in a little bit late on Sarah. I think UConn was recruiting her, much earlier in the process than we were. And that was the tipping scale that she already created really good relationships with Gino and CD and their staff members. But being a teammate, I thought would actually help us out a little bit more than would have helped us out. Like we made history together. We would. But I'm super happy for Sarah. Sarah is Sarah. I might say this. She might be in the next 3 years. She might be the best player to come out of UConn, and that's those strong words. I know Stewie won 4, right? But what she's able to do, stay calm, the IQ is off the charts, the skill set off the charts, big play after big play after big play, and such a great compliment, to already skilled UConn team. Like I think she's the piece that puts it all together. She makes it all work.
We'll go Nancy, then Michael Vopel.
Don, Nancy Emmer, USA Today Sports. You might have seen Paige more than any coach outside of the Big East during her career, and I'm just wondering how you've seen her game change, or if you've seen her game change over her career at UConn.
I think Paige's game changed when probably Gino kept challenging her to shoot the ball a little bit more. Like, her passing ability is A1, and she's really a selfless player. So I think her being a little more selfish has helped her game and helped her understand that, passing to somebody that shoots less of a percentage than you, it's probably not a good decision. So she's just being more aggressive, shooting the ball.
Michael, if you could raise your hand.
Thanks. Michael Vopel, ESPN.com. Coach Staley, for about a decade, from 95 to about 2007, it was UConn, Tennessee, were the two superpowers. For the last decade, it's been you guys and UConn. I just wonder if you could talk about what it means to women's basketball to have standard-bearer programs like that, and especially with two coaches who've done everything, Olympic champions, national champions, just what that means in the grand scheme.
Yeah. So it's hard to break into what Pat Summitt and Gino, what they've done, in the time that they've served our game. Like, it's really hard to even be mentioned in that era, but we've been uncommonly fortunate. Because I do think we give hope to other programs that are up and coming to know that you can break in. Like, you can break in. It's hard, because it's hard. Anything that you do and you have sustained success is really, really, really hard. But once you're able to understand what it takes to succeed at there, it's a little easier, because and you know it earlier. You know it earlier in the process than later in the process. And I say, because when you haven't won a national championship, you really don't know. You really, and for years, for 17 years, I used that, hey, come help me win a national championship. I didn't really know how to win. But when you've won, it's a little easy to identify what those things are, to stay in the conversation of competing against those eras of talented coaches and programs.
Shifting to our left, in the black, could you raise your hand? We can get the microphone to you.
Hey, Aiden Connor, Carolina News. You talked about the elevation of Paige, but the entire UConn team, Sarah Strong, Fudd, El Alfie, just this team, do you see any differences with this UConn team than the UConn teams you've seen in years past? And if so, what are some of those differences?
Carolina News as in South Carolina?
Yes, ma'am.
And you asking these questions about UConn? What story you writing, man? I think UConn, this is how they play. Like, this is normal for them. I think previous years really haven't been normal. I mean, from injuries to just, not having depth as they normally have had. So I think they're just comfortable, comfortable in what they're doing. They know it's the very thing. It's almost like you know what you need to be successful. We just talked about that. You know the type of players that you need, and I'm speaking for UConn. You know the type of system that you want to run. You know what you need from a defensive standpoint. Like, they're hitting, all of their marks when it comes to what a national championship looks like for them.
Go to our right with Howard.
Dawn, good to see you. Howard Magdal at the Next. If I could ask you just about a couple of validators in the program. You guys have now been to 5 Final Fours. Someone could check me on my research, but I think only UConn and Stanford have done. Even Pat Summitt's Tennessee did not do that. That obviously, by definition, even in the COVID year, 4-year school, that spans different contributors. I don't believe you have anyone who had minutes in the first of those 5. If you can just take me through what that means to you, and related, you have won your national championships with a signature star, somebody who's headed to a lottery pick immediately following in some cases. What will it mean to the program to win a championship, if you can, without that signature star?
Fagan's going to be a lottery pick. Fagan. Sanai Fagan. Saying it right here, right now. It's the players. I mean, it's all about the players. It's all about the players' commitment to winning. I think when players understand, really understand that they're going to be pros. Like, all the players that contributed, to the success of our program over the past 5 years, they knew they were going to be pros. So that's one less thing you have to worry about. And that's one less thing that, you have to talk them off the ledge because, they get so antsy because they think every missed shot or every bad performance decreases their chances of becoming a pro, when we know that's not true, right? And once we get them to settle in on, Zaya Cook was talking about the WNBA after her freshman year. After a freshman year. You shouldn't be worried about that. Even in your senior year, you shouldn't even be worried about that, because the work that you put in will say, you're going to be a lottery pick. And then, to be where we are, to be in a national championship game with the players that we have, and no, we don't have we don't have a real go-to player, like a real, person you get the ball in their hands and they're going to play make for you. I think it's to me, it's just old school basketball where you're just playing to your strengths, and our strength is our depth, our ability to play together, to play linked up. And I think a staple for us has been our ability to defend, because the offense will sometimes, go off on a journey on its own, and our mainstay has been our ability to defend and come up with schemes that will help us through those stretches where we got a lull from an offensive standpoint. I think it's great. I mean, the 3 games in between yesterday and the first game, people thought we were just dead. Like the way that we're playing, we can't win a national championship. We're not going to make it to a national championship game. And it's something to say about players who have a belief in each other. And I hope it gives hope to other programs that you don't, I mean, it makes it easier when you got a go-to player for sure, but it's not an impossible thing to do when you don't. You just have to lean on each other a lot more because you don't have that go-to player.
We'll go to the back in the pink and then over to Ben.
Beth Wool with Fox Carolina. Your name is synonymous with basketball, not women's basketball, basketball as a whole. When you were a young girl growing up, dreaming, working hard, could you ever have imagined that and the pivotal role you would play for so many people in accomplishing their dreams?
No. I think my joy just came from playing, just competing. And it didn't matter if the stage was big or if the stage was just, on a cement court in the middle of the Raymond Rosen housing projects where I grew up. Like, I get the same type of emotion, energy, and competitiveness, the drive that, like today, or if I'm a little girl on that court playing with the guys, it's the same thing. So the charge is the same. I'm fortunate that the game has given me much more than I anticipated. And it's probably because of how I sacrificed it. I don't even think it's a sacrifice. I chose basketball. Like, I chose basketball over everything. I chose basketball over going to proms. I chose basketball over hanging out with friends. I chose basketball, through it all. And in return, it's given me so much. Now, I'm probably a little socially inept because I chose it, right? But the impact when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like I'm living my purpose, I'm very comfortable in that. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and fortunately, I'm very fortunate that somebody saw something in me that I did not see in myself. I did not see coaching, I did not see coaching in my life. Yet when Dave O'Brien, the great, the late great AD at Temple University, just saw something in me that I really didn't, and he challenged me. And that's the only reason why I got into coaching. He challenged me to turn Temple women's basketball program around. And I've never been challenged in that way. And fortunately for me, I was drawn to it. And, after that, after the interview that I didn't know was an interview, I didn't know it was an interview because I'd never been on an interview. All my interviews were tryouts for basketball. Got suckered into just coming there, meeting people. He's asking me to walk down the hall with him. He sits me in front of, at the head table of this conference. There's 10 to 12 people sitting around this table. They're asking me, what do I see myself doing in 5 years? I'm playing in the WNBA. They're asking me all these questions, and I had no clue, y'all, because when you don't know, you don't know. And then, I later found out that was the committee that was going to pick the coach, their next coach. And needless to say, I took the job 2 weeks later, and that is 25 years later, and I'm still living my purpose.